This segment is brought to you by Les Stanford Cadillac Chevrolet in Dearborn, Michigan. Please visit lesstanford.com.
Welcome back to Inside the Pizza Oven. With me again, Dan Miller. After we got him making a nice pizza over there, it's cooking right now, ham and pineapple.
We'll see how nice it is. I'm hoping it looks good. I had a little help.
You know, it's funny because I will email the guests before they come on to ask them a few questions. And, you know, Dan's like, I know you don't like pineapple on a pizza, but I like ham and pineapple. So, because he sees my tweets sometimes. Pineapple does not belong on a pizza. So I got you listening.
I got a buddy that we grew up together, and all we did was go eat pizza and go places. Now we just like Hawaiian.
Actually, to be honest with you, it's not bad.
Yeah.
You know, it just not enough people.
It just cracked me up because I saw you one day tweet, "No go."
Yeah. Did you see the pizza I put out with black licorice a couple weeks ago?
I did see that.
That got a lot of buzz.
Yeah, I'm not big on the black. Red licorice, I like. Black licorice, my wife loves black licorice.
I love black licorice. So
I think that's a do or don't for most people.
To me, it was actually really good because I put olive oil and then I put the black licorice and cooked it in, and it was almost like having Italian sausage on the pizza because of the fennel. So for me, it was great, but I'm biased. I love black licorice. Yeah. So. Yeah, I'm quirky like that. So you got to be quirky on Twitter, right? Because you're the only way to survive.
It's you know what? Stuff like that gets attention because immediately people are either yes or no, and they want to respond.
100%. So we were making a pizza. We were talking about growing up Washington D.C. area. Mm-hmm. Your mom was a big fan of Maury Povich. How did you become a sports fan?
You know, we moved from College Park, Maryland, to Reston, Virginia when I was 8. And I moved into a neighborhood with this amazing group of kids that's all we did. I mean, when it was football, we played football. When it was baseball, we played baseball. When it was basketball, we played basketball. We had a great wiffle ball field.
Even hockey probably too.
There wasn't much hockey. I really didn't get exposed to a lot of hockey. The Caps came a couple years later. I'm telling you, growing up, this is the difference between DC and here. And it's changed now because these are more popular, but you know, growing up, I remember one kid that played hockey, and that was in college, and his ice time was like 11:30 at night. It just wasn't something that was on the radar for a lot of people in DC. But you know, my love for sports came from that. Just came from you know playing it and being exposed to this great group of kids. So. It was our life. That's what we did, man.
That's what we did. You know, we were in the park every day, right? It was just like you said. We played baseball until baseball got burnt out, and you know, we'd be like, if we didn't have a right fielder, if you hit the right field, it's an automatic out, right?
Yeah.
Official quarterback.
You had a dead field over there. Yeah, you had quarterback for both sides. Yeah, we did the same thing. You made it work.
Yeah.
You know.
And then you think about when we watch sports too. You know, for me, you know, growing up watching the Tigers were on 2-3 days a week, if that. Yeah. So I'm almost to the point where this is kind of my belief that I don't know if they're bigger sports fans now or before, but I think maybe back then, maybe we were a bigger sports fan because we got less of it. So it was almost like a girl that you really liked in high school. You only got to see her a little bit. You craved her, but you know.
I think there's some of that, but I think it's also there's so much more to do now. I mean, we didn't have computers. I mean, I remember the first kid who had a Pong game. I mean, that's, you know, so we didn't really have the ability to sit in front of a computer and play whatever game is hot now. So we kind of, it's just, I think there's more now. When I watched my kids grow up, I would see them doing things that, you know, just wasn't available to me. I mean, we had to figure things out for ourselves, make games for ourselves. We didn't have some of the things. So I think there's the ability now to become even more passionate about it because there's so much more information out there now. You can delve so deep into things, but I just think maybe the variety of things the kids can do now have taken them away from playing some of the sports.
My dad used to say when he was a kid, their game was who can carry so many cement bags on their shoulder and who can go the farthest. Yeah. So my dad said he had a record like 5 cement bags on the shoulder. I go, Dad, that's not impossible. It's possible. But he said, yeah, he did it. So
yeah, I mean, you can see the change from that generation to your generation to our kids' generation.
Yeah. So obviously, sticking to parents, I mean, I say parents mold you to who you are. Your mom and dad, your influence your mom and dad gave to you?
The influence from my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis the year I was born. So I really never knew my mom 100% healthy. By the time I was old enough to remember things, She was starting to walk with canes. She had it for 46 years before she passed, and ultimately was, went from canes to, started actually leaning on my dad, and he would help her walk, to canes, to, a scooter, to a wheelchair, to bed. So watching her fight, and I don't know if you understand it as much when you're young,
Yeah.
but as I've gotten older, I realized watching her fight was, I think, impactful for me, because you just saw how much she never gave in, that she wanted to live her life. She wanted to be there for her kids. And it's a brutal, brutal disease. And she had the type of MS that is just constantly degenerative. And so that, and then I think for my dad, it was watching him support her and support his kids. And those were really the three pillars of his life. There really wasn't anything else that he did. He, took care of her, took care of us, worked his tail off with his profession. And I think those were the impacts that they had on me. And I think, again, I don't think you realize those things necessarily when you're young, but I think you pick up on them and they help mold you.
And we battle that with I have younger kids, and you got kids, and you battle with that, trying to teach them. Are they really listening? Are they tuning you out? And you hope they figure it out when they get older. And you think our parents were probably the same way, right?
Right. But and I think you keep pounding it, and then you're hoping they pick it up. And I think they pick it up more than you think.
Yeah.
And then you set them out in the world. My kids are older than yours. You set them out in the world. And then I think you watch them and how they conduct themselves, and you're proud, and you see what they're doing.
So was your father a sports fan?
No, my dad was not. He was very supportive of me. Took me to Redskins games. We had season tickets. Took me to Bullets games. We didn't have baseball teams, so he'd take me to the Orioles games. Took me to hockey games. So he fed into what he knew I loved. But for him, it was just a chance to go sit down and have a beer. He wasn't really into the sports. It's funny, because the most I ever saw him get into sports was when I got the Lions job, and we would do the game, do the locker room, and I'd be sitting on the bus, and almost invariably my dad would call me and talk about the game, and I'd be like, that wasn't like him, but he found a way to get into it. In particular, once I kind of dove in with the Lions, and he became a Lions fan and wanted to talk about the games and things like that. But it was never a big part of his life. My grandfather that was an impact on me. My mom actually liked sports. She loved sitting down and watching games. But it was just, like I said, really from my dad, when I look back, taking care of mom, taking care of kids, working hard.
Is your father still alive?
No, he passed.
Did they live in Washington when you came?
They grew up in Washington, and then I was born in Washington. We moved around to Maryland, lived in College Park by the university. And then I grew up mostly in Reston, Virginia, which is, about 25, 30 minutes outside of
So when you
DC.
came to Detroit to work for Fox 2, your parents were still in?
Yes.
Okay, so, and I'm really fast forwarding here, but did you call a Washington Redskins game with the Lions when you're?
I called. I did a Redskins.
I'm thinking of the game when Schwartz threw the headset.
When I did a game, the first Redskin game I did was when I was doing games for Fox.
Okay.
And I did a Redskins Green Bay game. I believe it was Redskins Green Bay at FedEx Field, which was a big deal for me. That was going back home, doing the network broadcast, and that was the first time that I had gone back to do a Redskin game, which was really cool.
Was your father alive?
He was.
So that's where I think he probably would have got a kick out.
Yeah, no, he did, and he got a kick out of when the games that I did for Fox would be broadcast into the Washington area, and he would get a chance to see it, or he would watch the pregame show and see me in my stadium, going back and forth talking about our game. So yeah, he was really proud. He was extremely supportive of what I did, and he was my biggest fan, my biggest just kept pushing me, and was always right there for me. you know, I'll,
When I hear you talk, I think about my dad the same way.
yeah.
So, well, so fast forward now to go way back. What was there a point when you realized, hey, I want to do this. I want to call games.
Oh, I don't know if it was the call games part as much as it was. I think I was 8 years
Be
old.
part of sports.
Yeah, I'd be part of sports. I was 8 years old watching the first guy that jumped out at me was Warner Wolf, who people might remember from Monday Night Baseball. And he was a big deal in Washington and went to New York, came back to Washington. I used to watch Warner Wolf do sports, and I would watch what he did, and then he'd finish, and I'd pretend I was him. And I just wanted to do sports. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to do what he did. And that became really my first influence. So really from the time I was 8 years old, watching the news and watching what he did, I knew I wanted to be involved in sports. And as I got older and started, going into press boxes and got into business and things like that, I was probably 18, 19 years old. When I would watch the play-by-play guys walk in, it was, to me, that was like magic. It was like I would watch them walk in with their briefcases, and it was like they were walking on air, because then they would walk into the booth. And that to me was just the coolest thing in the world. And I just dreamed that one day I would get to walk into a booth and do a game. But I just sat and, marveled at those guys doing what they did.
Do you remember the announcers during? Because you grew up watching some pretty good Redskins teams. I mean, I remember watching them. I think I'm just a little younger than you, not much, but those are some of my favorite teams. Joe Gibbs and the Hogs, and we're going to talk about that. But do you remember the announcer?
Oh, the announcer in my head is Frank Herzog.
Okay.
Who was the voice of the Redskins when they became great under Gibbs. And it's funny, I can tell you that, I watched Super Bowl 17 when Riggins went around the left side and on TV, but the voice I hear in my head is Frank Herzog calling it in radio because it became so famous afterwards. But Frank was somebody that I later got to work with and was hugely supportive of me. And that's actually where my touchdown call came from, was Frank.
Yeah.
He was the one who had that call originally. And by the time I got this job, he was no longer doing the Redskins, and thought, pick that up. But he was somebody who said to me, I remember his words. I remember I was working with him, and he looked at me and he knew what I wanted to do. And I was, struggling finding traction, things like that. And he said, you can do this. I said, do what? He said, you can do what I'm doing. You can do the play-by-play. You can do the TV. You can do all of it. And that to this day meant the world to me, that he would say that to me and give me that kind of confidence. So I try to pay it forward now, help people when I can, because I know how big that was for me.
Do you have some favorite announcers growing up? I mean, I know for me personally, this is people. I say Mike Patrick. I don't think he's calling games anymore. He was always a favorite of mine.
Mike was terrific.
When I think of Mike Patrick, I think of Sunday Night Football. You think of Paul McGuire, Joe Theismann. But Mike Patrick, man, he just had a voice to him and could really call a game.
Mike was a DC guy, and I grew up watching Mike do. Yeah, I watched Mike do ACC basketball and then the Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
Tremendous talent. I mean, that's one of the voices I grew up listening to. I mean,
low key guy. You didn't hear much about him.
No, but he made sure the game was the thing.
Exactly.
Again, he wasn't the thing. The game was the thing, and I respect that. And growing up, for us, the big thing was a Redskin Dallas game. When that came on at 4:00, and it was Summerall and Brookshire. I mean, that was when you knew you were about to be a part of something special, when those guys came on. So certainly that was part of it. Look, Monday Night Football was everything, with Howard Cosell and Frank Gifford and Don Meredith. I mean, I remember I'd be on the phone with my buddies when the Open came on, and then you'd be on the phone at halftime seeing if your team's highlights were being shown by Howard. So those guys, that was bigger than life. I mean, I don't know if people now can understand how big Monday Night Football was back then.
Yeah, I'm 50, and I remember. Deal. I remember Earl Campbell.
Yeah.
My first memories.
Yeah.
Love You Blue.
Howard singing the song.
Yeah.
The Houston Oilers song. Hearing Howard do that. I mean, it was that stuff all just kind of drew you in and made you want to be, part of that, in that business. And, you imagined yourself wearing that yellow jacket doing a Monday Night Football game.
Yeah. We bring up the Washington Redskins, and I was watching something the other day. The Redskins, Jack Kent Cooke, the owner, he was he was out there with his team with Joe Gibbs. I saw a clip with him. He wanted to fire Joe Gibbs. He was picking his quarterbacks for him and all that. Did you see that back then?
Well, I mean, I know this when Joe Gibbs was 0-5 his first year, Mr. Cook is the one who said to him, "You're my guy. Just keep doing what you're doing." And they finished 8-8 that year, and then they took off. So I got into the business. I covered Mr. Cook for a while. He was an intimidating guy, man. Yeah. He was an intimidating guy. He was, especially when you were young in the business and you were just figuring things out. He just had a way about him that you didn't want to say the wrong thing.
He was,
but he was a heck of an owner, and he was an owner in a time when there was no salary cap, and he just basically would give you a blank check and say, make me a winner. And he was a different cat. He was from a different time. There was just a kind of bigger than life quality to him, that was from a different time. And but he was successful, and he knew how to surround himself with successful people.
So in 1997, you come to Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know where Detroit was? I mean,
yeah, I had been here. I had produced college football games, and so I'd been to Ann Arbor a number of times for Michigan games, and I had come here. I remember.
How'd that come about? I mean, were you told?
So
better opportunity, or
I was doing weekends at the ABC station on TV, and I was doing talk radio during the week
in Washington.
Yeah. And I was doing talk radio during the week. And I was looking for what we call in the business.
Radio business.
Yeah, I did sports talk radio. So I did overnights, and then I did every different time shift. So, in our business, you were looking for a number one job, which is Monday through Friday or Sunday through Thursday, which is the case. And I'd applied for a lot of them and come close and not gotten them. We had long talks with ESPN, which resulted in an offer, but it just didn't feel right to me. That was April of '97, and then in August of '97, my agent called me out of the blue, and she said, we hadn't applied, we hadn't done anything. She said, "There's a news director in Detroit that likes your tape." Because what they would have was they'd have these things called clearinghouses, and you're a news director, and you say, "I need a sports guy." And they would have 100 of them, and you just click, 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 see if there's something that catches your eye. So she said, there's a news director in Detroit that likes your tape. So I remember I was upstairs in our house in Ashburn, Virginia, and I walked downstairs, and my wife had her back to me, and I said, "Hey," because we'd been through a lot of apps, a lot of interviews, and some close, some offers didn't make sense, stayed where we were.
It's a strain on the family.
It is, and it was, you're just trying to make. I always say my wife and I ran through a maze to get where we are, and I wouldn't want to do it again because we had to make a lot of decisions along the way, and I'm thankful we made the right ones. We were blessed. But I walked downstairs, and I said, "Hey, there's a news director in Detroit that likes our tape." She goes, "Okay." I just paused, and I looked at her and said, "This is it, right?" She said, "I know." And we'd been through a lot, but there was just something that told me, and I don't know what it was, that was the one that was going to click. Now, I didn't know it was going to last 23 years. I didn't know I was going to be here for this long, but I really felt in that moment we were going to get that job, that we were moving to Detroit.
Who would you replace? Was it
Frank Malicote? Frank Malicote wasn't here for long.
You remember Mark Wilson and stuff?
Yeah, Mark I think was before Frank, then Frank.
They all switched stations.
Yeah, and Fred had been there before that.
Yeah.
And then
Fred McLeod.
Fred McLeod, and I replaced Frank Malicote, who left to go back to Boston. So he was there before me, and came here for the interview, and he kept Neil Goldstein was the news director, who I love. Huge impact on my life, giving me the job in my career, just in the way that he taught and the way that he was. He kept asking for more tape. More tape. And I was out of tape. I just didn't have anything else to give him. And I called him up and I said, "Neil, what's it going to take?" I said, "To make you happy." I said, "I don't have anything left." He goes, "I should be happy, shouldn't I?" And I said, "I want you to be happy. I just have nothing left to give you." And then the offer came through. Right, the offer came through in the next couple of days. But he was trying to make sure he was right, and I get it. But after a while, I had nothing left to give him. I couldn't make anything else up.
Yeah.
If you or your family is touched by autism, learn more about Fredi's foundation at #PopTheTap at FrediThePizzaMan.com. That's FREDI, thepizzaman.com, or email FrediThePizzaman@gmail.com.
So Dan, you brought up Fred McLeod. I think you were there. The last was Cleveland versus. Was it Cleveland?
We
versus
had played golf in Houston.
Oh, it was Houston. Yes.
Yeah, we had played golf in Houston, and man, that floored me. I don't even have words for it. I mean, it's just, he was just such a.
He was a pro's pro.
When you that goes without saying.
Yep.
And we used to have a ball in the sports office listening to him call Pistons games, and we used to just some of his calls. I remember they can't stop it with a billy club.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just great. It's just he was him. He was original, and that's what you should be. You should be you. It's the only thing that separates you from everybody else. But having spent that preseason with him, and then being able to have a meal or go golfing or whatever, and then you hear he's gone, it just. I can't. I don't have words for it even now.
Yeah.
It just
Young age.
floors you. Yeah, just too young, and he and Beth were. She was at some of the games, and those two were just so tight, and it just breaks your heart, and he's absolutely missed, and what an original and what a terrific broadcaster.
He did call the Lions Houston game on TV that night, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We got through the preseason, and then it was he was getting ready to load up and do the Cavs again, and working on his handicap, which was, I think, the biggest part of his summer was just getting that handicap down. He was so driven on the golf course, but there's no words for something like that. It's horrible.
So let's. So 97, you get the call. You come to Detroit. You have 4 kids.
I had 3 at the time.
I was gonna. Okay, so you had 3 at the time. Obviously young, right?
3, 2, and 6 months.
Oof.
Yeah.
So
our girls are 14 months apart, and then 18 months to my son.
So maybe making the move was a little easier than being so young.
It was a little easier because it wasn't me; it was my wife.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
I came out here a couple weeks ahead of time.
Meaning they didn't have friends, like they're, maybe 10,
no,
11 years old.
Yeah. No, that was, they didn't feel that. That was, it would have been a lot harder had they been in 8th, 9th grade, something like that. So they were young enough that Detroit became their home.
Yeah.
This is all they know. They don't really remember much from being in DC area, Virginia, or anything like that. So it was, but it was, it was different, and it was tough on my wife because, you come here and you are immediately, woven into kind of all these different things, going to practices, going to games, meeting people, and she's at home with kids.
Yeah.
So it was tough on her. It was much tougher on her personally than it was on me because we moved away from her parents as well. So those things aren't easy for anybody, and anybody out there who's made a move for work knows that it's not just my business; it's any business.
So when you came here to Fox 2, were you just doing the news, the sports on Fox 2, or were you calling any games locally?
I had not called any games locally. The first thing I started doing in terms of calling games, I got the opportunity from Fox to go to Europe.
Okay.
And do NFL Europe, which is kind of their proving ground. They say basically, show us what you can do. I went over there for 2 weeks, did a game in Berlin and a game in Amsterdam, and then came back. Got a real nice letter from Bill Brown, who kind of ran that whole thing at Fox, and he said, we think you did a good job. We think you deserve to do some Fox NFL, and I did the Lions opener at New Orleans that next year, and that kind of started me doing games for Fox over the next 4 or 5 years.
So when you went to Europe, you only went for 2 weeks?
They send you in 2. Most of the people only went for 2 weeks. They didn't really ask you to go over there for a season, but they sent you for 2. You'd do 2 games while you were over there, which is pretty cool. It's a free trip to Europe. And
if it was longer, your wife probably would have told you
to
stay.
You know what? Again, that's the tough part is you're in Europe, and you're hanging out in Amsterdam, and you're hanging out in Berlin, and she's at home with I think at that point still just 3 kids. So might have been pregnant with a 4th at that point. So yeah, again, she got kind of the raw end of that deal.
The woman's always the rock, right?
Yeah, and she was. And that's, I'm very, very lucky that, you and I talked about this a little bit. I was just driven
Yeah.
to find my way in this business.
Yeah.
And it took me away from a lot of things at home. And I was just so focused on getting ahead and finding a way in this business. Never said no to anything. It took me out of the house a lot, and it left her to deal with, most of the things that I wasn't there to deal with. And
Yeah.
she did a great job. And, I look back on it now, and I don't know if I'd have done it differently, but I do know I missed a lot. And I do know that that kind of tunnel vision took me away from a lot of things. And even when you're there, I don't know if I was present a lot of the time.
I understand.
It's just kind of the way that was. Just, I felt like that's what I had to be to get where I wanted to be, or somebody else was going to pass me by.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I opened a pizzeria at 21. I got married at 38, and I had my first child at 40.
Yeah.
So, like you, I was really driven at a young age to follow in my dad's footsteps and own my own business and never work for anybody. But I didn't have that, the wife at home and
Yeah.
the kids at home, and it's tough. But I have it now, but I'm not as driven in the pizzeria business as I was before because my mind is somewhere else. But it's tough when you have you have a great job, two great jobs, and you have to be top notch at your job, and to have kids at home and a wife, it's not easy.
Yeah, and believe me, there's probably a pretty significant divorce rate in our business, and if she wasn't as strong as she is, we might not have made it. And I know she's a huge part of anything that's happened to me because, we did have a lot of decisions to make along the way, and she helped me make those decisions, and they turned out to be the right decisions. And, she was my sounding board, and, she didn't like something I was doing or a way I was doing it, she would tell me. And so she's been, not just at home where she has run things and kept things in order, but she has been a massive part of whatever I've become on the air.
Yeah, and I feel the same way with my wife too. So I totally understand what you're talking about. And it's you from afar. I've been a big fan of you. I've always watched you, and I've always said to myself, this guy really carries himself really well. He's just well spoken and everything. And you direct messaged me one day out of the blue and really caught me by surprise. Obviously, people know I have a son with autism. You told me you had a son with autism. I really love what you're doing. You really. I don't want to say caught me by, I was shocked, because you had a son with autism. It was just, if we're going through the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
How was that for you when you first found out about your son?
Well, having had, he's our youngest, so having had 3 kids before, we knew something was a little bit off. And like a lot of parents, we'd mention it to our doctor, he's not really speaking, and they'd say, oh, it's because the older kids are speaking for him. And he would just do things we never saw them do. Like he would run down the sidewalk and skid. I mean, just, skid marks everywhere, up and down. Wouldn't cry. Just get up, start running again. There was just difference. He would climb up the outside of the staircase. You'd come around a corner and you'd be like, he's up there at the top on the outside. He was.
No fear.
Yeah, he was, there was something we knew that was a little bit different, and we could tell through his temperament that something was going on. So we got him diagnosed, and I don't know, we weren't shocked, because we knew it was coming. But there is a reality that hits, and I think we surrounded ourselves with good people, and a lot of them said, hey, look, let's not put any limitations on him here. We're not telling you that your son isn't going to go to college, or we're not telling you that your son isn't going to be able to get a job, or that your son isn't going to be able to support himself. We just need to do the best we can now to put him in the best position to be successful. And that, I guess, has always been my mantra, my thing, my message to people is you shouldn't be limited by a diagnosis. That shouldn't be the day that you say, okay, he can or she can only do X. You're limited by what your limitations are. And the spectrum is so vast that limitations for kids are different. It should not just be you're autistic so you can only do X. It should be you're a person So you can only do X because that's what your limitations are. And, you know, that's what we've always tried to live by. And we've done, you know, the best that we could for him and given him the best opportunities. And he has made incredible progress. And
How old is he now?
Robbie is 18.
18.
And he just graduated high school, got his driver's license, so he's out driving himself around, and just seeing him do some things that, you know, the social part is hard. Making friends is hard.
Yeah.
That's part of it. But seeing him do some of the things that you know, other kids did, our kids did, other kids do, picking up a buddy and going out to dinner, then dropping his buddy off and coming home. I mean, that was huge for us. I mean, the day he passed his driver's test, I mean, that was, you know, we had worked hard. And, you know, hand-eye coordination for autistic kids is hard. Teaching an autistic kid how to parallel park isn't the easiest thing in the world for some of them, because they don't understand that relationship. Yeah. And, you know, that was one of the most nervous days I've ever had in my life. Was
big parking lot.
Yeah, and just that testing that day, but, you know, didn't bother him, and he did it. And I remember the person who was giving him the test was the same one that had a couple of my other kids. So he recognized me when we got there, and I recognized him. And so he's in the front seat, Robbie's driving, and I'm in the back. And it was the day that the Lions played the Patriots. It was a Saturday before the Lions played the Patriots on a Sunday night a couple of years ago.
We won.
And so we did win. So he turned around and he looks at me and he goes, Robbie's driving. He's taking his test. And he goes, hey, what do you think tomorrow night? So I gave him the longest, most involved answer that anybody's ever given about a football game, because I was just like, look at me, don't look at him. I just want you to look at me and not worry about him taking the test. And we got back and he said, you passed. And it was just like, you know, that was amazing to me. And that's, you know, it's steps like that, it's normalcy like that means a lot. And we're really proud of him.
I can imagine your wife, mom, because I know my wife. I mean, the difference between a dad and a mom when it comes to a son. Yeah. My wife cannot hold anything in when it comes to my son. You know, crying wise. No,
it was a really, that was a big moment. That will always be one of the moments in my life that sticks out, is just seeing him do that. And then, you know, seeing him drive back and forth to high school every day, and just, you know, you search for things that allow him to feel normal. Yeah. And for you to see him being normal, because you know how important that is. You don't, you know, autistic kids in many ways at times will stick out because they're different. And that's, I think, what we have to understand is, yeah, they may be different, but they're not incapable. So anything that allows him to feel just like a kid is an awesome thing.
Exactly. Now, my son is 7, yours is 18. When he was younger, do you remember those days with the siblings? You know, like I was telling you off camera, like my girls will drive him to chaos sometimes, you know, because they just cat fight. But he plays around with them, and he does things. And, you know, now my son is again 7, but he's starting to really talk a lot. So I don't know if yours was not talking at an early age.
He began to talk, and when he started, he never stopped.
Okay. He's my son. I know.
Yeah, he talks and talks. It's that's, you know, one of the amazing things is you have, you know, nonverbal children on the spectrum and adults on the spectrum, and then some like Robbie and your son. Robbie doesn't stop talking. So, which is, you know, it's a beautiful thing. And my kids.
See, the reason why I ask is because, what my concern is, and I think any parent in this situation is, I worry that my daughters are going to regret what's going on, because we're always pushing them, hey, take care of your brother, take care of your brother. Yeah. Were you in that same situation?
I think my memory of it is they were protective of him. Yeah. And now look. The tough part is my kids saw a lot of nights out, dinners out get ruined because we got to go. Yeah. Trips to the store, we got to go. Oh. You know, things like that. Just they had to endure a lot of that. Their life lacked the certainty and normalcy that some people's lives have, because we didn't know, you know, if Robbie was going to have an explosion or there was going to be a problem. Now, the amazing thing is how quickly he grew out a lot of that and just became the quietest one of the bunch in terms of the best behavior. Now, he's still yakking,
Yeah.
but, you know, they might be getting in trouble. He's you know, probably the best behaved at that point. But I really feel like it has made my kids more understanding,
Yeah.
you know, more sympathetic. I think it has made them better people just in terms of how they will treat others and be accepting of others because of what they have lived through with their brother. And I'm proud of them for that. I think it's, you know, I see the way that they reach out to people. And I think that's a beautiful byproduct of all of this, is just the way that they're more understanding, because there's a lack of understanding a lot of times with an autistic kid that comes from maybe the outside in. And
I had the same
that's hard.
situations. I had the same situations going out. You get the stares, and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, you get that.
You kind of,
you know, why can't you control your kid? Well, actually, I can't.
Yeah.
We're doing the best we can.
Yeah, we want
And
advice, and family would kind of intervene, and
yeah, and it's
you know.
and it's hard. And I think you and I talked about this a little bit. There was always a judgment too, I felt, where even amongst parents of autistic kids, oh, you're not doing this. Oh, you're not on a special diet. Oh, you're not. It's like,
Yeah, we got a lot of that.
we're doing the best we can.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, if it works for you, great.
Yeah.
We've tried a lot of things, and a lot of things didn't work. And maybe it's some of the things that you're talking about that you're looking down on us for not doing. But we read through a lot of that.
We have to balance out the other siblings, because if you do put a lot of attention on just the boy,
Yeah.
then the other ones feel left out, especially at a young age when
Yeah.
they don't understand. You know, that's what, you know, I'm kind of at that stage, but again, you know, my oldest is really loving and caring. They both are, but she's older. But I do worry, you know,
Yeah.
I do worry. Will she resent that, you know? And it's a situation I think we all, if we're in that situation, we think about, you know. But
I think what I would say is show them love.
Yep.
Make sure they know they're loved. As they grow older, I think they get it. I think they understand, you know, our brother's got some issues that we have to deal with. It might take a little more time. I really feel like my kids, and I think because they're young and it becomes a part of their life, I think they adapt because of that. I really do. And it's not to say that everything is perfect and there aren't those moments, but I really believe you will find that your daughters will be more understanding. And I do think that this will, in the long run, make them, you know, I don't want to say better people, but it will certainly make them more tolerant, more understanding, more willing to reach out to others. And that's a good thing.
does he watch Dad on TV? Does he listen to the Lions games?
He couldn't care less.
Yeah.
He's look, you know, people talk about my wave at the end of the show, and that was to my kids when they were younger. That I'm still waving, they're not watching anymore. But it's no, he doesn't. That's not really a big part of what he does. He loves computer games, and that's his passion, and you know, so that's his thing, and that's really been his thing for a long time. As you know, autistic kids can really just latch on to something, and that becomes
Trains and cars.
everything for them. And for him, from an early age, it's been computer games, all systems, all games, all different stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't care. Dad makes a pizza. He doesn't want to. He had more interest in making a pizza at 4 years old than he does at 7.
Yeah.
Now he just wants to eat it, and he's actually grown tired of pizza. So that's a surprise. So let's end
He'll
it with,
come back around.
Yeah, let's do a little rapid fire.
Let's
And
do
first
it.
of all, I want to tell you thank you for opening up about your son. I know you. I don't know you. Obviously, we just met, but from watching, you're a private guy. And to open up like that really means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
I appreciate it, and you know, what you do is amazing.
Thank you.
And I know what these rooms that these kids will be able to benefit from mean, because we've used them and we've been through that. So I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and watching, and that's why I reached out to you, because I just wanted you to know that it's so important what you're doing.
Yeah.
And what I said to you and what I've said to others who are active in this regard, you're affecting lives and changing lives of people you'll never meet.
Yep.
But it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that means the world to me. So I'm going to give you a couple of names, and I'm not going to ask you who's better, but you followed both guys. Joe Gibbs, Scotty Bowman. Tell me a little bit about.
Very different personalities, very different. Both driven, both tremendous command of their teams. Now, I used to tell stories. Joe Gibbs never cussed, never. But you'd be at practice and you'd see a couple of guys joking around over there, and Gibbs would just give it one of these. Stopped.
Yeah.
Tremendous command. Both brilliant tacticians. Both. It was the preparation, I think, that separated them in many ways. I remember Joe Jacoby told me once. He said they were in a playoff game. They got the game plan on Wednesday. He said as soon as he read it, he knew they were winning. I mean, Gibbs was just maniacal about preparation, and I think there's just a leadership quality to both of them. Bowman was probably a little more. He would rub you a little bit more than Gibbs.
Yeah.
But just both tremendous leaders of men.
I was listening to a podcast Art Regner was doing a few weeks ago with Scotty Bowman, and just listening to Scotty, he mentioned something that didn't dawn on me. He won 3 cups here with 3 different goalies.
Yeah.
And obviously, Joe Gibbs
Yep.
won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. So that's an amazing feat right there.
Theismann, Doug Williams, Mark Rippon.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty incredible that he just kind of rolled through those, and Bowman, he had when you watch them, you just understand their leadership qualities, and that's really what. But different guys in terms of the way they did it.
Now, do you remember Vince Lombardi in Washington, D.C.?
No, that was before I really became cognizant of football, because he had passed at that point. But I worked with Sonny Jurgensen on Redskin broadcasts, and I got to pick Sonny and Sam Huff's brain, in particular Sonny, about Lombardi. And oh my God, he just loved him. Only got 1 year with him, but swore that if they were starting to turn it around with Lombardi, and said if Lombardi had stayed, we would have, George Allen came and got things moving forward. But if Lombardi had stayed, he really believes they would have been a championship team. The way that he talked about Lombardi, you just sat and listened and understood, again, the type of leader that Lombardi was and why he was so successful.
Yeah, absolutely. He would have won a few Super Bowls there.
It's unfortunate that he passed, because it was, in talking to anybody that was around at that point, it was as if he was just picking up where he left off in Green Bay. It was within him.
57. He died a few months after I was born.
Yeah.
So 1970. So, and I'm glued to him. Anything I can read on him or watch on him. My wife, you're watching Vince Lombardi again? Yeah, because I want to learn something new every day.
Yeah,
So,
and I think there are things that you can take from somebody like that and apply to any life, doing anything, and there's lessons in that.
So, talking to you, you brought up Sugar Ray Leonard as one of your favorites. Why is he
I
making?
was 13 years old in 1976 when he won the gold medal.
Yeah.
So here's this guy from Washington, D.C., Palmer Park, Maryland, and he's there basically representing our city. So we all fell in love with Ray.
Yeah, like Tommy Hearns
And
here.
yeah, like Tommy Hearns here, exactly. And so Ray was my probably sports hero growing up, and followed his career, got to work with him later. I actually produced a radio show for him, which was great. And he was just a great guy, humble guy, and I enjoyed spending time with him, and worked with him in the mid to late 80s, and watched him as he came back to beat Hagler and do those things. So, I mean, that's one of those ones that hits you as a kid and you never lose it. That was it.
Now, I tell people, do you remember when he did that show with Sylvester Stallone back in the early 2000s, the boxing show?
Yeah.
No one seems to remember that, but that was a pretty decent show.
It was kind of like the Voice or whatever, where you're separating boxers and they're fighting and stuff like that. Yeah, there was a couple of those shows that came out, and the one you're right he did with Stallone. But that was such an incredible age for boxing, when you had Tommy Hearns and Duran and Leonard and Hagler and Benitez and all those guys. It was, that period was incredible.
So back to Detroit. Who's got a chance to win the next title in this town? I know it's.
We're looking for somebody to make that move. We're looking for somebody to show us that they're ready to. Look, the team that is the best right now is the Lions. But are they ready to win? Well, show me what that defense can do. I'm not worried about the offense. I want to see what their defense can do. So everybody else is kind of in a deep rebuild.
If I tell you the Detroit Tigers, am I way off the wall on that? Because, of course, we don't see the young talent up here, but I feel like they have so much young talent down there that it's just going to.
Well, they have young pitching. We need to see how quickly some of the young, how quickly is Riley Green going to come along? How quickly is Torkelson going to come along? How quickly can these guys get to the major league level where they can hit? Because you look at these teams that win, when we were growing up, you felt like there were maybe 3 guys in the lineup that could really, rake. Now it's like 8. There's like 8 guys that come up and can just beat you. So you really need to build a deep lineup. So look, I think they're doing a lot of the right things. You're going to need some luck. These guys haven't pitched one day in the majors yet. You worry about arm injuries and the prevalence of Tommy John surgery and things like that. So look, I see a lot that I like there, but a lot has to go right for you to make that step.
John Riggins, Calvin Johnson. A couple guys. I mean, John Riggins, I'm not sure if you covered him, but you watched him.
Yeah.
Calvin Johnson's a guy you covered here. Tell me a little bit about both guys.
Different as can be. Riggo, bigger than life.
Probably drink some beer before the game.
Yeah, just bigger than life, and I've gotten to know Riggo well over the years, and actually he's a buddy of mine, represents him, and so I've got to work with John when I got into the media, and John always kind of lit up a room. Both amazing athletes. People don't realize that about John. John was a sprinter.
He was fast, man.
But he was. Calvin was just, all he wanted to do was play and go home.
Yeah.
Calvin didn't want anything else that went with it. Calvin wasn't gonna say loosen up, Sandy baby, to a Supreme Court justice like John Riggins did. But they both got you to the same point, which was being a great football player.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed that I got to call Calvin's games, and blessed that I got to watch Riggins growing up. But 2 great football players, but man, 2 very different guys.
Good football team needs guys like with John Riggins' kind of personality, I think, right?
I do think that you need diverse personalities in there. I always tell people, look, you have 53 guys in a room. That's a cross section of society.
Yeah.
And it really is. And it's a cross section of different personalities and drives in the way that they are. But it's, I think it's the leadership at the top. I think it's the coaching at the top, things like that. But you need talent, and sometimes unique personalities helps as well.
I give you 2 names, Gretzky and Jordan. Who are you picking?
I'm a Jordan guy. I grew up where he was.
It won't be well
everything.
taken in this town, and I'm a Jordan guy too.
I'm a Jordan guy. Just in terms of who I think is the best basketball player of all time. To me, it's Jordan. Look, I didn't see Oscar Robertson. I didn't see Russell. But to me, it is Jordan. I just if it's Jordan, LeBron, I'm saying Jordan. Gretzky was amazing too, and did it over a long period of time, and did it better than anybody else. So I don't know how you would draw the difference between those 2, but if we're, looking at the basketball argument, I'm a Jordan guy.
So you took to Twitter the other day, and you had the tweet that kind of broke Twitter a little bit with the NHL draft, and I want to get to that, but when I was watching, hey, the Wings have a chance at number 1, so I'm going to watch the NHL draft.
Yeah.
Normally I wouldn't, so I'll admit that. But they were showing Mario Lemieux highlights, and I thought, that's when I used to really love hockey.
Yeah.
So when I say Gretzky and Jordan to you, why not Lemieux and Brady, Tom Brady? I mean, could they be in the same?
I think greatness can be compared to other greatness. I mean, I do think, there does seem to be a pecking order, and Lemieux obviously had injury issues, which took away from some of what he might have accomplished. But I just think there are names, Freddie, that we put at the top that certainly leave others out, but it becomes the focal point of an argument. Like when you talk about that, you are leaving Alcindor / Jabbar out, who was amazing.
Yeah.
You're leaving Magic Johnson out, who was one of the most dynamic players
I always say
who
Larry
could
Bird.
change a team. You're leaving Bird out because it's become this kind of Jordan, LeBron thing. How would you compare anything to what Bill Russell accomplished in terms of winning championships?
Yeah.
So I think there's always going to be guys that get left out just because the conversation just kind of centers on other people.
So your tweet that you sent out on Friday, you were upset. The Red Wings, for lack of better terms, basically we feel got screwed getting the 4th overall pick versus. And then what makes it even worse is a playoff team is going to get the number 1 pick.
I just think I think lotteries have outlived their usefulness. I really do. Look, the NFL is incredibly successful and they don't have a lottery.
Yeah.
And their draft is one of the biggest sports events of the year.
Yeah.
You don't need it.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, I think the way I looked at that was, it was really a cool opportunity to see something great happen in Detroit.
Yeah.
To see something exciting happen in Detroit. To bring Lafreniere in here and to be able to rally around this. Now, they're going to get a good player, number 4. We'll see what happens. But, I'm not a hockey elite guy. I'm not, there's guys that know a lot more about hockey than I do. To me, it was just this chance to change the conversation and to maybe, add some jet fuel to the rebuild and just to fall down as far as you possibly could just really didn't feel right.
Well, you weren't here in 1980, so maybe what you were thinking is that, for me, Billy Sims, Isaiah Thomas, and Steve Yzerman came. This could have been Torque, the Red Wings guy, Okuda.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Who knows? Pistons could get lucky.
Exactly.
You
so
know?
kind of,
I don't know. It's
good for Detroit sports.
It would have been great, and it would have been exciting, and it would have given people just something to kind of latch onto. And just when it goes as bad as it possibly can, it just was like, are you kidding me?
So last question for me is, I didn't want to talk about the Lions much because you get there all the time. So what would a playoff win for you call? I mean, you grew up in DC. You call the Lions games. I mean, I know your easy answer would be, hey, calling a playoff win would be great but you got a couple buddies. I know Steve Courtney, Sean Belish. I could just imagine what they tell you what it is growing up a Detroit Lions fan.
Well,
for you to call a playoff win, what would that mean?
And let me just say this. I don't think I understood it when I got here because I came from a place where you felt like you had a chance to win the championship every year.
Yeah.
And I got here and look, I knew the history of the Detroit Lions, but I probably didn't know the depths of the emotions that people had. And I would kind of say to people, no, it's not that bad. Hey, it's going to turn around. And they'd be like, no, it's not. We don't feel that way. Look, I don't believe there's a curse. I don't believe losing is predestined. I believe you're a victim of your decisions or you're a benefactor of your decisions.
Yeah.
It would mean everything to me, and I'll tell you why. It's not about me, and in some ways, it's not even about the team. It's about the fans.
Yeah.
What I say to people, and it is the absolute truth, the best part of my job is seeing fans happy.
Yeah.
The best part of my job is going to the gas station or going to get something to eat or going to the grocery store, and people are like, we're rolling. The worst part of it is seeing people angry and upset and hacked off. And man, I dream of it. People have asked me, have you dreamed about a Super Bowl? 1,000,000 times. And made the call driving down the road to myself 1,000,000 times. Of course I've dreamed of that. It would be the biggest thing in the world. But my dream is Woodward. And my dream is Hart Plaza. Yeah. And my dream is what it would be like to celebrate that moment that people have wanted.
You just said Woodward. Did you know?
Yeah, boom, we get a honk right there. Yeah, can you imagine what that would be like? Standing out there in the middle of February and just all the people. I mean, that's my dream is what that would be like. I've called playoff games. It was incredible. It's like a dream come true. Want to call a playoff win. Want to call multiple playoff wins. I want to call a win in February.
Yeah.
That's what I want. But I want it for the fans. I want it for the people that I think have poured their heart and soul into this thing and keep coming back. And even for the ones that have gotten angry and walked away, I hope that would be a moment where they could come back and say, you know what, they finally did it and know that I understand the anger. I'd love to see a point where we could all just wrap ourselves around a team that got it done.
Well, I was telling Coach Campy earlier before you came in that it's going to be 2022. The reason is because 20 for Sanders, Sims, and Barney, and 22 for Bobby Lane. And ironically, all their contracts run out at the end of 2021. So maybe in 2022, they could be playing for a Super Bowl and win it. It would just be.
I don't know if I want to wait 2 years, but I'll buy into it, and that's great. If that's what it takes, then that's the deal. And if those numbers do have some magic qualities to them, that would be great.
Lastly, I wanted to ask you, Matt Millen. How's Matt Millen doing?
He's good.
He's good.
He's good. Yeah, I talked to him probably last time was a couple months ago, and he has the new heart. He's doing great. I saw him last year during the preseason, and he is, it's a miracle. And I thought it was really cool. We did a story on Matt, and I was honest. I didn't know how it would be received, but universally it was. Maybe there was a couple, Twitter, but universally it was. This was before he got the heart. It was, I'm rooting for him.
Yeah.
Football's football, but this is a man with a family. And I will say this, Matt is, and I knew Matt long before I came to Detroit and long before he came to Detroit. He's as fine a gentleman as you will find, and as giving a person as you will find. And I'm happy that he's doing great. I'm happy for his family that he's doing great. And I even, like I said, I was so pleased that when we did that story, that so many people who never want to hear Matt Millen in Lions or Matt Millen in football in another sentence understood that this was about a life and got behind it and said, hey, I'm rooting for him.
Absolutely. It's well said. So, Dan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Freddie. I appreciate it. It is great to see you. And again, thank you for all that you do. It's like I say, for many people, autism doesn't affect you till it affects you.
Yep.
And people like you are out there getting things ready for the next family that it affects or the families that it's already affected. And that's a beautiful thing.
And thank you for what you do. You're a great dad and a great radio guy.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Les Stanford Chevrolet Cadillac is a family-owned and operated full-line Chevrolet Cadillac dealership located in downtown Dearborn, Michigan. For the past 50 years, Les Stanford has been dedicated to excellent customer service in sales, service, and auto body repair. We have all the resources available to make a fantastic car buying and servicing experience. This includes a massive selection of Chevrolet, Cadillac, and certified pre-owned inventory to choose from, free loaner vehicles for service and collision center customers, and a finance source for every type of credit situation. Come experience the Les Stanford Chevrolet Cadillac difference today by visiting our showrooms in Dearborn, Michigan, or shop online at lesstanford.com.